Jesus cleanses the temple. When the days of Passover drew near, Jerusalem swelled like a living sea. The sun settled over the temple like a crown of brilliant fire, illuminating its white stones until they shone against the sky. Jesus, walking with his disciples, moved through the crowd with steady purpose. His eyes were calm, but a depth stirred behind them, something ancient, something fierce, something that belonged to the holiness of God himself. As they ascended toward the temple, the noise reached them first. It was not the sound of prayer, nor the gentle murmur of worship, but a thick, tangled roar, animals crying, coins clattering, merchants shouting over one another with the desperation of competition. The temple, which should have breathed with reverence, trembled with the chaos of commerce. Jesus stepped into the outer court, the court of the Gentiles, and the fullness of the disorder hit him like a wave. Oxen lowed as they strained against their ropes, sheep bleated. Doves beat their wings inside wicker cages hung carelessly from beams. Money changers sat behind their tables, their hands stained with dust and the shine of coins, their expressions fixed with the hardened calculation of profit. Foreign pilgrims approached them reluctantly, exchanging their currencies at rates that stripped them of what little they had. A weary old man pleaded for a fairer price, but the merchant waved him away. A young couple tried to purchase a dove for sacrifice but were told their money was not acceptable. Arguments rippled across the court, rising and falling like troubled waters. And all the while, the house of God, intended to be a refuge for the nations, was drowned in the noise of greed. Jesus walked deeper into the court, moving slowly, seeing everything. He saw the deceit hidden beneath polite smiles. He saw the burdens placed on the poor. He saw the distortion of worship twisted into an industry. His disciples watched him, sensing the building storm within him. They had seen him gentle. They had heard him speak with compassion. But what they saw now was different, still grounded in love, but a love that refused to share space with corruption. A love that protected what was sacred with the force of a rising tempest. Jesus approached a cluster of ropes lying abandoned beside a stall. Without a word, he picked them up. His fingers moved with deliberate slowness, weaving the cords together. The marketplace continued its noisy frenzy around him, unaware that its reckoning was being braided in his hands. As he twisted the last strand into place, the disciples felt something shift in the air, a tension, sharp and electric, as though the heavens themselves held their breath. Then Jesus stepped forward. The first crack of the whip snapped through the air like a bolt of lightning tearing across a silent sky. Everyone froze. Animals jerked in panic. Merchants spun around, eyes wide. And then his voice rang out, clear, commanding, filled with a thunderous authority that needed no explanation and tolerated no argument. Take these things out of here. Stop making my Father's house a marketplace. His voice carried across the courtyard, echoing off the stone. Merchants scrambled after them, shouting in disbelief as their profits scattered in every direction. The disciples watched, stunned, as Jesus approached the tables of the money changers. His hands, steady and unwavering, seized the edge of the first table and lifted. Coins erupted into the air like sparks from a struck anvil, clattering across the ground. Money changers fell to their knees to gather them, only to recoil as Jesus overturned another table, and then another. Each crash sounded like a judgment pronounced, like a trumpet of truth tearing through years of corruption. A cage of doves trembled nearby. Jesus approached the merchants who sold them and said with a voice both fierce and sorrowful, "Take these things away." They hesitated, shocked to stillness, before scrambling to obey. The sacred courtyard, once suffocated under the weight of commerce, began to empty. Animals fled bleeding through the gates. Merchants shouted helplessly. Pilgrims stared in a mixture of awe and terror. A holy silence slowly began pushing the chaos aside. Some men shouted angrily at Jesus, their voices cracking with indignation. "What authority do you have to do this?" But Jesus did not answer them yet. He continued clearing the courtyard until the last table had been overturned, until the final cage had been removed, until the air felt lighter, as if the temple itself exhaled a breath it had held for too long. Their robes were immaculate, but their eyes burned with offense. Jesus looked at them with a calm that startled even his disciples. When he spoke, his words were like a door half opened, simple, mysterious, impossible to ignore. "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." This temple took 46 years to build, and you will raise it in 3 days. They dismissed him with contempt, blind to the truth standing before them. People whispered among themselves. The merchants gathered their fallen coins with trembling hands. The animals had vanished into the streets. Worshippers watched Jesus with uncertainty, some with admiration, some with fear, all with the knowledge that they had witnessed a power unlike any they had known. The disciples looked at him, trying to understand the meaning behind his words. They would not understand fully, not yet, but something in them whispered of Scripture, "Zeal for your house will consume me." They felt the weight of that prophecy settling into place. As Jesus walked out of the temple, the courtyard behind him lay transformed. The dust had settled. The air carried no laughter of merchants, no cries of animals, no clatter of coins. Only a deep, reverent silence remained, the kind of silence that belongs to holy places. For the first time in a long time, the house of God felt like a house of prayer again. The disciples followed him, still stunned, still sorting through the meaning of what they had just seen. They walked through the streets of Jerusalem, hearing rumors already spreading among the crowds. Whispers of authority, whispers of anger, whispers of awe. Some praised him, others plodded quietly. But Jesus walked with steady steps, knowing exactly what lay ahead. A day would come when the meaning of his words, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up," would blaze into clarity. A day when death would try to silence him, and life would answer loudly. Only then would they realize that he had not spoken of stone and mortar, but of his own body, his life given, his life restored, his life becoming the eternal meeting place between God and humanity. And so the temple, on that day long before the cross, stood cleansed, not merely of animals and coins, but of the illusion that God's presence could be controlled by profit or corrupted by greed. Jesus had walked into the heart of worship and declared with fire, authority, and unshakable truth that holiness belonged to God alone. And in doing so, he opened the way for all who would seek him, not through markets, not through systems, but through the living temple himself. If you love God, like and subscribe for more stories like this. God bless you and your family.